Good morning and welcome to the European Parliament in Strasbourg today. We'll be discussing the issue of fake news in the digital era, and I'm accompanied by all the MEPs Marietje Schaake, Morten Løkkegaard, Petras Auštrevičius, and so far so good. Misleading campaigns and the use of strategic disinformation have always existed. However, the digital era is giving an all-new dimension to this practice, and fake news was not a term used that much 18 months ago. Now it's become word of the year, and even it's one of the favorite terms of President Trump, and it has raised tension between nations, and it might lead to regulation to social media. You are the co-authors of a policy paper on fake news in the digital era. Now, Morten, is fake news actually current news today? Why is it important to talk about it?
Well, it's important because it's mixing a lot of things up. Actually, I have mixed feelings about the whole term fake news because, I mean, we all always had fake news. I mean, it's nothing new about that. So in the sense that we have a lot of fake news in news as such, it's really not a new thing. The new thing is that we have a big and very complex problem emerging in the world right now because of the technology. So fake news can be spread much quicker, much more deliberately than before. So since we already have a crisis within the political system globally, this fake news problem is sort of adding to this more bigger problem. So that's why I think it's worth discussing. That's why I guess we all are occupied with this problem, and that's why we have to discuss it even more. And because we have 5 different proposals here, 5 different areas in which we have to discuss this, and hopefully we can get a good time discussing it right now.
Definitely. Marietje, you gave a statement that was published today on the New York Times, and I'm just quote from that. President Trump doesn't only talk about fake news, but attacks the media as fake news, and that's an attack on free press. And you went on saying, as the leader of a country that traditionally defends human rights, that's very serious and has a major impact worldwide. Why is that? And do you see a correlation between the spreading of fake news and a decline in trust in politics?
Of course. I think the two are integrally related, and that is also why we have to be so careful about what we think might be the solution. So first of all, I think fake news, like Morten also said, it's like a container concept, right? It gets stuck on almost everything that people don't like, whether it's a kind of rumor or a critical comment or actual foreign influencing of our democracies from abroad. It's too much of a broad term that gets used too frivolously. So I think we have to be very clear about what we mean. Do we mean foreign interference of our political debates? We need to address it. We need more transparency about who is paying for advertisements. We need more transparency about who the messenger is when there is a discrediting of our democratic institutions, democratic politicians, democratic concepts. We need to also invest in independent media, independent journalism, international media, so that we can explain also to audiences worldwide, what we stand for, how pluralistic our debate is. It's not simplistic. We have multiple voices, and by showing that, we show the values that our society is built on. But I think the real goal that unfortunately some of the foreign influencers have, and perhaps also the President of the United States, is to erode the trust in any and all institutions as such, in any and all media as such. And in an environment where trust is lacking, strong leaders have an advantage, because people get uncertain, they wonder whether there's any truth or any shared space anymore at all, and they cling on to strong leaders. And so I think it's not so much about making us believe untrue or rumored stories, it's about eroding the trust in our society at all. So it's not the cause of mistrust, but it's the goal of creating mistrust.
And drawing on to that, in the paper I read the word weaponization. If used systematically, can fake news be used as a weapon, and are we witnessing such occurrences either in favor or against of the European Union? Petras Auštrevičius.
Well, in fact, we live in the age of simply individualized social media. So you might collect by clicking, by liking, by inviting somebody to your friends. The whole stream of information, you will be approached almost as a personality. Among those who try to approach you and to present you a certain picture of the world, especially about the Western democracies and the Western system, I'm afraid we witness more and more outside interaction. Sorry to say, but we have to acknowledge that there are state and non-state-based actors next to the European Union, East, South, who have really a task and a vision to challenge our basics. Democracy, rule of law, fundamentals of our economy, classics of our lifestyle, and so on and so forth. With the kind of question, are you, meaning living in the West, you really enjoy, a democratic environment? Are you sure, you vote for the right politicians? Is it the system which has any advantage in terms of human rights, social economic development, and so on and so forth? This is the task, to erode very basics of the Western system. And they present it with the fake news. They create news out of nothing. And they try to bring that fake news, to the minds of, first of all, own people, and then on Western citizens. We saw not once very effective, I quote, very effective try, and not just try, but an impact engaging into the election system, campaigning. Look how many tweets were created outside about Brexit. More than 45,000 on Twitter. It's unbelievable. It shows that we're not alone on this planet. We're not alone. There are some who try to challenge us, but they do it not in a kind of transparent, dialogue-based way. They create trolls, they create fake news, disinformation campaigns, and the most importantly, they see a value of investing millions into this campaign. It shows that it's not just individual-based kind of process or campaign, it's systematic try to challenge the Western style of life.
Well, you just outlined a pretty strong challenge for Europe and for democracy as a whole, but in light of this, what can the European Parliament and the European Union as a whole do to prevent fake news to be used as a political weapon? What can we do?
Well, we have different tools, I guess, in our toolbox. That's what we are pointing at in this paper. One thing is, of course, to go up against this force Petras is talking about here. We have the Stratcom office. And what is that? That is an office which try to spread some light over the many fake news we actually see at social media, and to point back and to create transparency. This is a very small office. It's only a start.
Exactly. So you just mentioned the East Stratcom Task Force. So it's a small office with a big role. Yeah. How can it be enforced then?
For me, this is not the final answer to this. It's only a signal, a political signal that we will not just sit here doing nothing. More importantly, I think, is that since we are talking about technology here, I think that we also need to do a lot with the educational system. We need to educate our youngsters to be in media literacy. We need to. The generations that grow up now need to know something about what's going on, basically. This knowledge is our best weapon. So politically we can, of course, support this. Now, education is not an EU competence, so of course we are challenged there. On the other hand, we can do a lot here, supporting this both financially. We can also coordinate this task within the member states. So we will do whatever we can, but of course this is also a member state issue.
Okay, moving on, what other points must be highlighted to tackle fake news to be used politically?
Well, as liberals, and we're all part of the liberal family here in the European Parliament, we are of course very reluctant to regulate speech. Freedom of expression, a pluralist, open debate is the key of an open society.
So regulation of social media is not the way forward?
Well, I think it's a simplified way of putting it. What we need is transparency on the advertisement models that these social media platforms live on. If we know that a message is not a neutral message, but it's actually a message coming from a political source, or is paid for by a political messenger, of course we look at it differently. If I post an article that's negative about my colleague, then of course the reader should know whether I do this as a politician or as an investigative journalist, you know, whether this is a message after research or it's a smear. So I think it's really important to get transparency into the advertisement models, and that is one way to tackle it. I think the rule of law online in Europe needs to be strengthened, and the digital single market offers us a way to do it. We know that a lot of the posting of messages, advertisement models, revenue models of big platforms like Facebook that we're actually ironically speaking on right now depend very much on algorithms, on computerized presentation of information, which also means that there's less and less of a shared space. You know, there used to be a time where everybody watched the news at 8 in the evening. Right now, the majority saw the same kind of information in the public interest, and we can be critical about the quality of that and everything, but there was public broadcasting that people looked at. Now, like Petra said, you follow people, you have an interest in certain topics, and it draws you into your own little ecosystem or filter bubble, as some people call it. And it means that there is less and less space for actual interaction. So social media are often not very social, and they actually reinforce people's views and perceptions. So I think we need to also understand how these algorithms work and make sure that there's oversight in the algorithms, in the advertising models, in the public interest, and not in a commercial interest to maximize profit for Facebook and the
what
likes.
about personal data? I mean, you talked about transparency from the companies. Where does the issue of personal data come in?
Well, you know, we are staunch defenders of the right to privacy, of safeguards to data retention, and we're in favor of data protection. So this is very important, and I think indeed people need to be educated about what they give away when they use so-called free services, because look at the profits figures of these companies. Look at how well they are doing.
Magic.
And we are using it for free. It's actually kind of an irony. So here transparency and safeguarding of data protection and privacy are key too.
So, I mean, the fact that we are on Facebook and we are debating about social media, it shows that liberals, I mean, we in the European Parliament, we have so much of trust to social media, and rightly so. It's unavoidable. But, well, once we have this tool, and indeed, it can involve you into, rightly said by Marietje, into something info system, I mean, individually designed info system. Well, but having this Stratcom, I mean, an excellent team of experts who try to present effective communication about ourselves. Not just to wait that somebody tries to create news about us, but we have to be proactive communicators, I mean, on advantages, on all decisions we make in this house, and to spread East Partnership, south of our neighborhood, Western Balkans, whatever it goes, but we have to make news about ourselves. But again, you know, I mean, effective communication, having being not a big brother, I mean, for social media platforms, we have to make everything possible that citizens are smart and critically minded consumers of information. They should be able to debunk, to decode, I mean, the information, not just to take as it is presented, but to have an ability, to have an interest and motivation, I mean, to see something behind. and not just to buy everything, you are given for free, as it looks like.
Morten, would you like to add something?
Can I just add to this discussion about the big American medias, that we have I don't know if people know that. Many people ask questions about it. What do you do? And I can say we have a dialogue with these companies right now. As we sit here with Facebook, we also have a dialogue with Facebook, an ongoing dialogue, and had that for some years actually right now. And why? Because we need these guys to live up to the responsibility. We need also for them to see that they are not only technical providers, they are in fact a medium, and they need to take the responsibility as media. And that is part of the discussion also. And we address that also in our paper here. We need to make them responsible voluntarily.
Yeah, but the problem is with them that I've had countless discussions with Facebook and other platforms about the huge responsibility they had around the American elections, for example, about elections at all. Because the way in which information is presented is crucial for people to be informed and to make up their minds. Whether it's positive stories, negative stories, hoaxes, as we've seen, that drifted to the top of the selection criteria. And at that time, these companies were very reluctant to even acknowledge that they have this huge responsibility. So I think that is actually unacceptable, and it cannot be the case that they only start moving when their reputation is at stake. And that's what we're seeing, and I think we have to be vigilant. Yeah. It's fine that they take voluntary measures, but they need to be convincing, and we need to apply oversight in the public interest, and if it requires regulation, so be it, because I think these stakes are too high. This is about the core of our democracy.
I would agree totally, and that was also my conclusion on this one. I'd say, well, right now we are looking at them reluctantly, but they're moving, and they are moving right now as we speak. So the good question is, of course, do they do enough? We don't know yet.
But will we ever know without oversight of their algorithms, without oversight of their business models? Right. And I don't think we will, unless we force oversight over the algorithms and accountability over their.
But we will see. We will see, because we agree on this one. I see. We will see whether they live up to the responsibility.
I'm sure there is agreement on this very delicate issue. Taking a step back, there is another issue that is not just related to the digital sphere, and it's the issue of independently operated media and investigative journalism. How can the European Union support neutrality and investigative journalism? We are in a time where independence of press is under attack also in a number of EU member states. What can the Parliament, what can Liberals do to help the neutrality of investigative journalism?
Well, I can say that that's quite funny, because we are actually also on the move on this one. Some years ago, when I started in this Parliament, that was part of my agenda, and I can truly say that, and Marietje would know, that at that point in time, people were laughing and say, well, of course the European Parliament do not have to do anything about that. That is of course changed now, because now everyone can see that journalism and the whole business model dealing with journalism is lacking, and this is I think that we can do something here, because when it comes to this is if you see all the exposure now of the tax fraud, all these Panama Papers, what have you, it's all done by investigative reporters uniting across borders, and this will be the future. That investigative journalism, good investigative journalism, is done cross border, and these guys, I know, because being a journalist myself, these guys, they need protection, they need support, both financially and legally, and we are the ones that can provide this. So I think we have a big task here. I
agree, but I don't think it's necessarily a neutral journalism, because I don't think journalism is ever neutral. No, it doesn't exist, but it's about journalistic principles, standards and criteria, and also transparency about it. And of course, in most major publications or major broadcasters, there are these mechanisms. There's even media ombudsman, for example, in the Netherlands, where if a reader has a complaint about how a story was brought, they can go and address it, there will be a reply. And so I think this kind of accountability on ethics, on standards, on journalistic principles should be the core of what differentiates media, even if journalists say things that nobody likes, it makes no sense to say, oh, it's fake news because we don't want to hear what they have to say. And we need to reinforce the space for investigative journalism, the freedom for a pluralist press, even if they say things that will make us lose sleep at night as politicians.
Exactly so. Let me to be very short on this. I'm very optimistic. I mean, in spite of all processes we go through,
that's good.
I'm a strong believer. I am a strong believer in professionalism in journalism. Look, I mean, it's a highly valued profession. Since
in some countries.
I'm not speaking about the yellow papers, but.
What is that? Gossip press or what?
Yeah,
something like. I mean, not a color, but substance. But really, I mean, we should be strong supporters of self-regulation, and every time we should, in fact, support by all means ethical approach. I mean, to this profession. So that's why, I mean, less intervention, more reliance, and more kind of demands, I mean, for journalists themselves, I mean, to raise the standard of information, I mean, they produce. Well, let's be very cautious, I mean, of interventions. I mean, here liberals have full agreement. I mean, it's better to be a step back than front, and I think things will settle.
Even recently, there was a journalist from Lebanon here who is working in very difficult circumstances all throughout the Middle East, and she basically begged us not to over-regulate on fake news because she said, I prefer chaos over EU regulation that will be used.
Creative chaos.
Well, that will be used to legitimize a crackdown on the free press and on journalists in other countries. And that, in fact, I think is already an effect that we're seeing of President Trump consistently saying that the media are fake news.
Right.
Because as a result, he empowers those who want to challenge the role of oversight and checks and balances that media should play in authoritarian regimes worldwide. And this is something I'm deeply concerned about, and it also means that Europe has to step up to the plate, defend press freedom more strongly, not only in Europe but also globally.
Under one condition, we should separate public broadcasting and state broadcasting. I mean, we still have a phenomenon of state broadcasting.
Yes. But that's the ethics again.
Marietje Schaake, you just raised the issue. Europe needs to step up. And taking back to what Petras Auštrevičius was saying before, this is, since fake news and external propaganda sees no borders, can this be a matter of the member states solely, or does this need a European strategy? Can member states tackle this issue on their own, or do we need any other encompassing strategy for the Union? What is your take on that?
Well, my personal take is, I mean, it should be a two-way road. We have East Stratcom, which is now not just on Eastern Partnership, but South and Western Balkans. We have to strengthen, and very good, I mean, we supported the increase of budget for 2018. It's absolutely the right tendency and the decision in itself. But member states, they should care about the quality of information space in their countries, because information is very individualized, is very, I mean, territory-based. It speaks certain languages. I mean, we have to be able to reply in that way. So that's why I would strengthen East Stratcom in a quality-based approach, as well as encourage member states not to oversleep this process.
Oh, I think that the question always it almost answers itself. Being a liberal, I mean, the liberal approach to this is, of course, this is a matter of the member states. But what we can do here is to create this transparency. We can support wherever we can on a European level, and try to raise the debate, make these policy papers on a group level, and of course make the pressure on the Commission and all other stakeholders, also the big Americans. We can do a lot. What I hear all the time is from my own member state is, please do something, because on a member state level we can do nothing about the big Americans. So of course we have a lot of responsibility there as European politicians.
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on what it is we're trying to tackle. So of course member states need to invest in public media, in investigative journalism, the space for journalism, etc., etc. But what we're trying to do here at the same time is to build a digital single market. And part of that also means that if we work together, indeed, We can put the public interest first over the commercial interest that some of these major, mostly American tech companies have at heart. And I have nothing against big companies, but I do think that there is a key public issue here, the core of our democracies, that's being eroded, and it is really done with the help of these online platforms, their advertisement and revenue models, and we should not be naive. So indeed, it's much easier on some topics, and it's also necessary if we want to build a digital single market to work together on a European level.
I'm going to read a comment from Facebook.
Oh,
so Michael is saying that we need to have a policy to unite our diversity in Europe and the world on this issue. All embassies and actors in the world should be involved in community building. Now, to wrap up, what is a wish for the near future on this issue? What do you hope for in 2018 to happen to tackle the issue of fake news and the empowerment of investigative journalism? Marietje, Morten and Petras, your wishes for 2018, since this is the last plenary session in Strasbourg.
Well, let me be a bit more strong than just ambition. We need to defend our open, liberal democracies. It is very, very important. They're not only being attacked from the outside, democracy is under pressure worldwide, the rule of law, respect for universal human rights is under pressure worldwide, but also it's being eroded from within our own societies. The whole question of foreign influencing, junk news, intransparent algorithms feeding our youth all kinds of information without oversight, they're all big problems. But let us be very careful that we don't fall into the trap of adopting measures that actually stifle free speech, that censor, and that actually erode the very principles and values that our open societies stand for. So yes, we need to address these challenges. We're working on it, and I'm glad that liberals are once again taking the lead, but we do so without sacrificing the very principles that we're seeking to defend.
Thank you very much. Morten, anything to add to this pretty ambitious program for the year to come?
Very well put by Marietje. I couldn't have said it better myself. But let me just rephrase what we already put in this paper. 5 overarching areas I think we need to go into. Data protection and transparency, as Marietje said. Limiting market abuse of personal data, that's one. Education and media literacy, I mentioned it myself. We need the youngsters to have skills to navigate in this new media landscape. Thirdly, online media responsibility. We talked about it. We don't need to regulate. Hopefully, they will self-regulate. Fourthly, independently operated media and investigative journalism. We just touched upon that. And fifthly, identification of fake news and misinformation, debunking strategies. This would be the 5 areas that we are trying to go into with this paper. And I hope that in 2018 we will be addressing 5 of them, every one of them.
Petras Auštrevičius, Morten just summarized the 5 points of the policy paper. Would you like to add something to your contribution?
Well,
fight Putin.
Among other things. I think it's not the way liberals are looking at 2018, at least. My very strong belief, nobody and nothing should push us away from beliefs in liberal democracy. Things come sometimes not in the easiest way, like social economic crisis and the rest, but principles we have created. I mean, probably we are not so efficient in implementing them to the very end, but they are healthy, they are strong, and they are long-term looking. So nothing should divert us from beliefs in liberal democracy, in human rights, on those principles our societies are built on. But, of course, in 2018 we will be exposed to new fake news, but I hope for only one thing. Christmas 2017 will be not fake, since we understand, I mean, the whole complexity of issues, and we still believe that humanism, on which we are all based, will prevail. And I'm looking forward that in 2018, as a group, as ALDE, as liberals and Democrats, we will have a very open and effective debate with our citizens.
Thank you very much for being with us today. You can keep following the ALDE group on all social networks. If you want to have more information about the last plenary session in Strasbourg for the European Parliament, follow #ePlenary. You can replay this interview later on. It will be published together with the policy paper. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.